The wind howled through the pines that night like 1,000 restless spirits. Snow fell thick over the New Mexico frontier, blanketing the world in silver silence. Somewhere deep in the wilderness, a young hunter named Elias Turner tracked the faint prints of an elk, his rifle slung across his back, his breath rising in pale clouds. Elias was only 23, but solitude had carved him into something older. He lived alone in a cabin his father built years ago, before the fever took him and left Elias with nothing but memories and the skill to survive. That night, the forest felt strain, alive in a way that made the hairs on his neck rise. The elk tracks had vanished, replaced by paw prints, too many, too close together, wolves, a whole pack. He crouched low, his gloved hand brushing the marks, fresh, maybe minutes old. Then, from the dark, came a cry, a human scream. Elias didn't think, he ran. Snow crunched beneath his boots, his rifle ready, heart pounding. The sound led him to a clearing where the moonlight revealed a terrifying sight. A young Navajo woman, her back against a tree, a broken spear beside her. Around her circled 4 wolves, teeth bared, their eyes gleaming yellow. "Hey!" Elias shouted, raising his rifle. One wolf lunged and he fired. Once, twice. The crack of gunfire shattered the quiet night. 2 wolves dropped, but the others charged. Elias swung the rifle like a club, smashing one away as the woman, bleeding from her arm, drove a knife into the last beast's side. When silence returned, it was heavy and raw. The woman collapsed into the snow. Elias rushed to her, his hands trembling. She was breathing, barely. "You're all right," he murmured. "You're safe now." Her eyes fluttered open, dark, sharp, defiant. "You shouldn't have helped me," she whispered in accented English. "They'll come for you now." He frowned. "Who?" But she fainted before she could answer. Elias carried her through the storm back to his cabin, his breath ragged, muscles burning. He laid her on his bed, lit a fire, and tended her wounds with what little he had. Through the night, she stirred in fevered dreams, muttering words in Navajo he couldn't understand. When dawn came, she opened her eyes again, clear this time. "My name is Ayana," she said softly. "I owe you my life." Elias nodded. "I'm Elias. You don't owe me anything." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. Something had changed in that snowy clearing. Over the next day, she regained her strength. She moved with quiet grace, her eyes always on the forest outside. Elias noticed the marks on her wrist, soiled scars, like bindings once cut loose. She refused to say how she got them, but when she smiled, even faintly, it melted the cold that had lived in his cabin for years. That night, as he was chopping firewood, she stepped outside wrapped in a blanket. "You're not safe," she said suddenly. "My people, the settlers, there's been blood between them. They will think you took me." He paused mid-swing. "Let them come. I didn't do anything wrong." Her gaze lingered on him. Sometimes innocence doesn't matter. The next morning, just as the sun broke over the ridge, the sound of hooves echoed down the valley. Elias stepped outside, rifle slung on his shoulder. He counted 8 riders, settlers, armed and grim, faced. At their head rode Sheriff Coleman, a man Elias knew well enough to distrust. "Turner," Coleman barked. "Step away from the house," Elias frowned. "What's this about?" Coleman's eyes flicked past him toward the window, where Ayana's silhouette could be seen. "We got word you're harboring an Indian woman, one that was caught near our settlement last week. You best hand her over before this gets ugly." Elias stiffened. "She was attacked by wolves. I saved her. She hasn't hurt anyone. She's Navajo," Coleman spat. "Her people raided a ranch 3 days ago, took 2 men's lives. She might have been part of it." Elias shook his head. "You're wrong." Coleman raised his rifle. "Then prove it. Step aside." Inside, Ayana stood silently, eyes wide but unafraid. Elias turned back to the sheriff. "No one's taking her from me." A tense silence filled the cold air. Then, in a slow drawl, Coleman said, "So that's how it is." The settlers spread out, rifles ready. Elias's pulse thundered in his ears. He knew this could end in blood. But Ayana's voice broke through the fear. "Elias," she said quietly, stepping out beside him, "they won't stop, but maybe I can." He grabbed her arm. You don't owe them anything." She looked up at him with tears glimmering in her eyes. "I owe you, and I won't have you die for me." Before he could stop her, she stepped forward into the open, hands raised. "I am not your enemy," she called out. "I was taken from my tribe months ago, sold to traders, beaten, escaped through the mountains. I never touched your people." The men hesitated. Coleman sneered. "Fine words, but talk is cheap." He raised his gun. Elias didn't think. He moved in front of her just as the shot cracked through the air. Pain seared his shoulder, spinning him backward. Ayana screamed, dropping beside him. "Stop," she cried. "You'll kill him." The settlers froze. Coleman lowered his gun, eyes flicking to the blood spreading on Elias's coat. Something in that moment shifted. The men saw not a threat, but a bleeding young man who'd risked his life for a woman they'd been taught to hate. Ayana tore a strip of cloth and pressed it against his wound. "Stay with me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Don't leave me like this." Elias managed a faint smile. You said I shouldn't have helped you, and I was wrong," she breathed. "You saved me, twice." By dusk, the settlers finally backed away, shame heavy on their faces. Coleman muttered something about needing to report to the judge, and they rode off, leaving the two alone again in the quiet woods. Ayana stayed by Elias's side through the night, tending the wound, whispering words of prayer in her native tongue. The firelight danced across their faces, his pale with pain, hers fierce with devotion. When he woke the next morning, she was sitting by the window, watching the sun rise over the snow. "You're awake," she said softly. He smiled weakly. "Guess I am." She turned to him, tears in her eyes but a smile on her lips. "You should rest. When you're strong enough, I'll go back to my people." Elias's heart sank at her words. "And what about us?" he asked quietly. Ayana hesitated, then moved closer, her fingers brushing his hand. "The world will not understand us, Elias Turner, but the forest does, the spirits do. Maybe one day the people will too." He looked at her, seeing in her eyes a promise, a bond born not of blood or tribe, but of courage, sacrifice, and something neither of them could name. Outside, the snow began to melt under the new day's sun. The forest no longer felt haunted, and for the first time in years, Elias felt like he wasn't alone anymore.